Dr. Edward Sminks. So I'll introduce Art now. His presentation is called, "What Have I Done to Deserve This? Are the Gods or God Punishing Me?" Edward M. Smink, PhD, defended his doctoral thesis, Thresholds of Afflictions, The Heroic Journey of Healing, at Pacifica in May of 2010, and graduated with a PhD in depth psychology. He has over 40 years of experience in healthcare as a nurse, crisis and pastoral counselor, executive leader, facilitator of mission, ethics, value and leadership formation, and community health. Since his last presentation at the Mythologium in 2019, which was titled "Who Hugs the Hugger? A Mythology of Self-Care," Edward has reached out to caregivers suffering from compassion fatigue as a life coach, presenter, and speaker, and he has promoted his book, The Soul of Caregiving, A Caregiver's Guide to Healing and Transformation, which I believe is in the bookstore as well. He has been a guest on several blogs on caregiving and is in the process of coming out with a revised edition of his book and creating an online webinar course. More about Ed and his work can be found on his website, and we'll get this into the chat too. His website is soulofcaregiving.com. That is SOUL of caregiving.com, all one word. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Smink. Ed, you have the floor.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you so much. I chose this topic because it's something that occurs to me all the time in my coaching and also when I was working in healthcare. What have I done to deserve this? Are the gods or God punishing me? So I ask if you can just take a second or two and just think, is that something that has crossed your mind? Have you ever said, what have I done to deserve this during some type of illness or tragedy? And are the gods or God punishing me? Just take a second and think of an experience that you may have. You know, our hearts are heavy and they become confused when we are in a crisis. So these are questions I hope you can ponder during this presentation. Why are these questions so universal in the hearts of humankind? And the second question, is this a function of the soul that gives us a deeper insight into healing? I was perplexed by these questions, and I have to tell you, after researching and working on this presentation, I came up with a different answer than I had when I first began. So it's like, woo, you know, I was taken by surprise. So when these questions confront us, we find ourselves in a crisis. And I'm sure you're familiar with the Chinese symbol of a crisis, a tree in a box. Well, guess what? If you have a tree and it's in a box, it's not going to grow. So there's something innate in the tree that goes upward, that pushes up and says, I need help, I need help. And at the same time, if you put your feet flat on the ground and wiggle your toes, you're digging deep within inside yourself. You're going to that place inside yourself where you discover your values. I often say where you discover your soul, because it's there that you understand who you are as a person. So what's the power of myth? Well, imagination, you know, we can allow ourselves to create the story. As we heard earlier, there's a story within a story within a story. And so the power of myth takes us, as Jung says, the mystery of myth is that it points us to insights and it remains elusive. And we only know its presence by the results it produces. So it's like nailing Jello to a wall. It just can't be done because the mystery of myth keeps evolving, keeps teaching us with new insights, as it has taught me as I was preparing this presentation. So where does myth take us? Well, I like Joseph Campbell, into the land of once upon a time. We can become children again. The call to adventure of our hero's journey. And Hillman says, psychology is the language of psyche, but soul takes us deeper. Myth takes us deeper into the realities of who we are as a person. And more of where does myth take us? Hillman also says, into that landscape where one finds some hidden ground to stand on, a mystical place that gives one a distant vantage point and perspective. Again, remember the tree in the box. You know, the tree goes down deep within itself and it finds that place, that mythical place where you can get a perspective in what's going on. And then Carl Jung also says, you know, myth takes us into our personal and collective identities. And there's many different examples of that we can talk about. So myth takes us on a journey. And I always say, travel any way you like. You can walk, you could hike, you could sit on the back of a camel, you could ride on a rickshaw, or sit on an imaginary magic carpet, because it's going to take you somewhere as you become a participant in a pilgrimage of magical proportions. So again, those questions, you know, what have I done to deserve this? And is God or the gods punishing me? Where does it take us? Where does it take you? Well, on the surface of these questions, again, what have I done to deserve this? Are the gods or God punishing me? These questions encourage us to go deeper, to ask, what are these questions? Why are these questions so universal? And is it the function of soul that gives us a deeper meaning into healing? Is it our soul that teaches us how we could answer these questions? And woundedness points us to wisdom. I like Jung's comment. He believes that it is one of the functions of the psyche. In allowing the experience of pain to be felt, one may experience wisdom that is hidden within, maintaining that tears, sorrow, and disappointments are bitter, but wisdom is the comforter of all psychic suffering. Again, within the woundedness is the answer. You know, in our culture, it's very difficult to acknowledge that. We want to get rid of the woundedness instead of allowing the woundedness to teach us something extremely important. Hillman says, afflictions point us to gods, and gods reach us through afflictions. We understand that sacred place within ourselves through afflictions. Again, it's so counterculture, isn't it? It's just so unreal that in the midst of affliction, we can understand the sacred. And I like what Marion Woodman writes, at the very point of vulnerability is where the surrender takes place. That is where the God enters. The God comes through the wound. So again, why has this happened to me, and why is God punishing me? So let's turn towards the sacred. You know, in Greek and Roman mythology, you have Apollo, you have the mortal god Asclepius, the myth of Epidaurus, that lasted over 1,000 years. You have Bridget of pre-Christian Ireland, the goddess of healing. You have the medicine Buddha, Basi Ja Aju, East and Southeast Asia. Again, these are gods that have been created in the imagination of humankind. You have Jigong, a Chinese Buddhist folklore, the god of healing. You have Sukuna, Ki-nona, Shinto, therapeutic powers of the hot springs and healing. You have Wang Tang-sin, Taoist, immortal, of the Red Pine Mountain, the god of healing. And all these are taken from The Nine Gods of Healing and Mythologies by Jed Young that I have there on the slide. We have the Egyptian Isis, the mother goddess of fertility, marriage and afterlife and healing. In Hinduism, we have the Dvaitari. He is a god of healing and medicine. In the Mayan culture, we have Eshel, the goddess of healing and medicine. We have in the monotheistic religions, Judaism, see now that I, even I, am he, and there is no God with me. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal, and there is none that can deliver out of my hand, from Deuteronomy. We also have from Jeremiah, nevertheless, I will bring health and healing to it. I will heal my people and will let them enjoy abundant peace and security. Again, the Jewish people turning to God for healing. In Christianity, and I am thankful to Arthur in his presentation, about the healing stories of Jesus. But the crowds learned about it and followed him. He welcomed them and spoke to them about the kingdom of God and healed those who needed healing, from Luke. Jesus went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness among the people, from Matthew. In Islam, from the Quran, and when I am sick, it is he who cures me. And another quote from the Quran, O mankind, therefore hath come to you a direction from your Lord, and a healing for the diseases in your hearts, and for those who believe, a guidance and mercy. These are all different approaches of humankind trying to understand the sacred when they're experiencing illness. And so within you is where the gods dwell. And I like this by Joseph Campbell. The Hindu revelation that you are it or thou are that led Campbell to the awareness that the gods are a projection of one's inner fire. Follow the footsteps to your center, to your soul, and know that from within you, gods are born. Within each of us is the capacity to seek the sacred. The deities are symbolic personifications of the energy that you are yourself. Within you is where the gods dwell. This is something from Gary Fergan. The ancients believed that there were 4 causes of disease. Disease as retributive, caused directly by a divinity, or gods or a god. A demonic force was responsible for inflicting disease on individuals. And a third was disease as the result of magic brought about by sorcerers or a magician. And the fourth, disease was caused by natural causes. And he also says these are not mutually exclusive. In most ancient societies, in fact, they were complementary. So disease as retributive, caused directly by divinity, gods, or a god. Well, we have Delphi was the center of the world in ancient types, and the Oracle of Apollo is at the heart of healing rituals throughout ancient times. When someone was sick, they did not seek a human clinician alone, but a divine one, since it was believed that illness was caused by the gods, and therefore could only be cured by a god or other divine action. A demonic force was responsible for inflicting disease on individuals. Belief that illness was caused by sin, evil, very common in the Jewish and early Christian and Islamic belief that it was caused by one's sin. In stories of Jesus casting out demons in the Christian scriptures, but also, as was mentioned earlier, the man born blind. was within the Jewish tradition that he was blind because of his sins. So we have disease as the result of magic brought about by sorcerers or magicians. And again, these are just little examples. You could probably give a course on each one of these topics, which I'm not going to do. Thank you, everyone. Curses and spells cast on individuals or communities common throughout history and in early Middle Age and Dark Ages, and I would say even common today. So one of them was the Kuru sorcery in New Guinea, where it was believed that magic brought about illness. But let's do something that's viable for today. Remember in the news, the resistance to polio shots in remote Islamic villages? They were afraid of doing that. And also resistance now to current COVID vaccine and the QAnon conspiracies that are going on. It's magic. And then of course, disease was caused by natural causes. And this transition from magic to science was a gradual process. It was mentioned in Greek medicine, and it was influenced by Babylonian Egypt and even China and India, that they were beginning to understand that it was a natural cause. We have Aristotle and Plato and Hippocrates influence Greek medicine that affects us today. Hippocrates and those attributed to him had little regard for the belief that supernatural sources cause disease. And during the Christian era, Christian saints attributed to miracles and healing, Cosmas and Damian, Eastern saints of medicine, and were the saints that helped in the refounding of Rome. And again, more examples. Arabian medicine, Islamic medicine attributed to chemistry and the preparation of medicines. You had Andreas Berzelius, 16th century physician, that actually started talking about the different descriptions of anatomy. And in the 17th century, you had Harvey. And Harvey was the first one that did an autopsy, and he held in his hand a heart. Now, but prior to that, the heart was considered the center of the person, the center of the universe. And here he's holding the heart in his hand, and he says it's a pump. Just think of that difference. A pump or the center of the universe, the center of what we're talking about during this whole mythologium is getting into our heart. So it's just interesting. And that was during the age of reason that was going on at that time. And then you had other people that you had the rise of the scientific method, and it became clear that diseases were caused by natural causes. You had vaccination against smallpox, Edward Jenner. And there was an African-American who was first to talk about this when he was a slave. He said to his master, if you do X, Y, and Z, if you take the pustule and re-inject yourself, you'll save yourself from getting smallpox. He was the precursor of that. You have Rene Linné, who invented the stethoscope. You had mental illness was not caused by the possession of demons. Philippe Pinel. You had public health and hygiene in hospitals developed in the 18th century. I had a story once of a friend who worked in Hawaii with the lepers, and he said Father Damien was there, and he caught leprosy, and one of the nurses said to him, "Did you wash your hands?" And of course, we're saying today, "Do you wash your hands?" To prevent illness. There was an understanding of physiology by Johannes Miller, understanding of germ theory in France by Claude Bernard, and the science of bacteriology by Louis Pasteur. And there's more and more and more, and we could continue, for the rest of the afternoon, of how humankind became more conscious that it was not caused by the gods, it was not caused by demons, it was not caused by magic, but illness was caused by natural effects or accidents. So turning to the sacred, no matter how we define her, is a universal and common experience. This is what led me to realize at first when I said, is there something wrong in asking the question? And I'm finding out within humankind and through all the different religious and mythologies, humankind went to the sacred. So it was a normal experience. It wasn't something that was uncommon. And this process leads us to reflection and insight. And I like this quote by C.J. Grossbeck. Healing becomes a divine and sacred action when it is vested with such dignity. This insight is critical in understanding the archetypical energies of the wounded healer, critical in that the wound itself is vested with its own healing power. So, questions for discussion. Why are these questions so universal in the hearts of humankind? And is this a function of the soul that gives us a deeper insight into healing? And if you want to give your answers in the chat, that would be wonderful. So thank you. And if you want to know more about me, you could go to my website, www.https://soulofcaregiving.com and edward@soulofcaregiving.com. And my number is here. And here's my book that I published in June of 2018, The Soul of Caregiving, A Caregiver's Guide to Healing and Transformation. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed. Big round of applause for Ed.